She had 3 seconds to decide. Reveal that she'd been secretly teaching the Shadow Lord's blind daughter how to fight, or let her be taken. Sarah Walker froze in the dimly lit hallway of Blackwood Manor. Ahead, through the slightly ajar door, she could see Abigail, 8 years old, fair hair, eyes that had never known the sunlight, and 2 men in dark suits closing in on her from the shadows. 3 seconds. What would you do? But before I tell you what happened in that hallway, you need to understand how Sarah Walker found herself there. And more importantly, you need to understand why the most powerful Shadow Lord in the world kept his own daughter locked away like a prisoner. It all started 6 months earlier, the day Sarah Walker walked through the gates of Blackwood Manor for the very first time. She'd seen a lot in her life. She'd trained in the toughest gyms in New York. She'd competed in matches where bones snapped like twigs. She had the scars on her hands to prove it, but nothing had prepared her for what she found in that manor. Silence. A silence so profound, it felt heavy. The staff walked on tiptoe. The guards spoke in whispers. Even the wind seemed afraid to make a sound. And at the center of it all, there was a little girl, Abigail Blackwood, the only daughter of Shadow Lord Alistair Blackwood, heiress to an empire controlling a large slice of global tech, and completely, irrevocably blind. Sarah discovered the truth on her 3rd day on the job. She was cleaning the hallway on the 3rd floor when she heard a sound that shouldn't exist in that manner. Weeping, not the loud crying of a child throwing a tantrum. This was something worse. It was the silent weeping of someone who'd learned that no one was coming to help. The kind of crying you do when you've given up on being heard. Sarah followed the sound to a door at the end of the hall. It was locked from the outside. Locked. An 8-year-old child. Locked in her own room. She glanced around. No guards. No visible cameras. Her fingers found the lock almost instinctively. Years of training had taught her things that went far beyond punches and kicks. The door clicked open with a soft sound. The room was huge, bigger than the entire apartment where Sarah had grown up. It had everything a child could want: expensive toys, plush furniture, a bed that looked like a cloud, and in the darkest corner, curled up like a wounded animal, was Abigail. "What's going on here?" Sarah whispered. The girl lifted her head. Her eyes didn't focus on anything, but somehow Sarah felt that she was being seen in a way that went beyond sight. "You're new," Abigail said. Her voice was so low that Sarah had to lean in to hear. "They always send the new ones away when they find out." "Find out what?" "That I'm broken." Sarah felt a pang in her chest. She'd seen plenty of pain in her life, and she'd caused pain. She'd received pain. But there was something about the way that little girl said broken that was different. It wasn't self-pity. It was acceptance, like it was a scientific fact. "You're not broken," Sarah said. Abigail laughed. A small, sad sound. "My father says I'm fragile, that the world is too dangerous for me, that I need to stay here where I'm safe. And do you believe him?" Silence. For a long moment. Just silence. Then Abigail said something that changed everything. "I used to, until I heard you unlock the door. You didn't use a key. I heard it. You did something with the lock, something the other maids never did." Sarah froze. "I know sounds," Abigail continued. "It's the only thing I have. I know the sound of every person's footsteps in this manor. I know the sound of my father when he's worried. I know the sound of Aunt Beatrice when she's lying. And I know the sound of someone who knows how to fight." "How can you know that?" "The way you walk, the way you breathe, the way your body moves in space." The girl stood up. She was small, fragile, but there was something about her shoulders that wasn't fragile. "Can you teach me?" "Teach you what?" "How not to be broken." And so it began. Every night, after the guards made their last rounds, Sarah would return to Abigail's room. She taught her what she could: basic stances, breathing, how to sense the space around her using other senses. At first, it was difficult. Abigail was weak. Years locked in a room had caused her muscles to atrophy. She stumbled over her own feet, fell more often than she stood, but she never complained, never cried, never asked to stop, and slowly, something began to change. In the third week, Abigail managed to hold a guard stance for 5 minutes without trembling. In the 5th week, she could sense Sarah approaching from behind just by the displacement of air. In the 8th week, she blocked a punch she couldn't see. "You're amazing," Sarah said that night. "You know that, don't you?" Abigail smiled. It was the first time Sarah had seen her truly smile. "I'm not amazing. I just finally feel alive." Sarah used Abigail's red hair ribbon to blindfold her own eyes. "If you can learn to fight without seeing," she said, "then I need to learn to teach without seeing. That way I understand what you feel." They trained together in the dark, 2 blind people dancing in the void. And in that void, something blossomed. It wasn't just technique. It was connection. It was trust. It was something that neither of them had ever had before. But secrets in manners never stay secret for long. Beatrice Vance was Alistair Blackwood's aunt, the older sister of Abigail's mother, who had died in childbirth. Officially, she was there to help care for her niece, but Sarah had learned to recognize predators, and Beatrice reeked of one. She watched, always watching. Her eyes followed Sarah through the hallways. Her questions were always a little too sharp. Her smiles never reached her eyes, and then, on a Wednesday morning, Beatrice found out. Sarah never knew how. Maybe a hidden camera. Maybe a gossiping staff member. Maybe just the instinct of a predator who sensed when something wasn't right. What matters is what happened next. It was lunchtime. All the staff were gathered in the staff dining hall. 27 people seated at long wooden tables, eating in respectful silence. Beatrice entered like a storm. "Stand up," she ordered. Her voice cut through the air like a blade. Everyone stood up. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Beatrice walked between the tables. Her heels made a rhythmic sound on the stone floor. Clack, 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 until she stopped directly in front of Sarah. "You," Beatrice said. The word dripped venom. "Do you know what you've done?" Sarah didn't answer. There was no safe answer. "This woman." Beatrice turned to the other staff. "This woman, we hired her to scrub floors and do the laundry. This woman decided she knew better than the Shadow Lord himself about how to care for his daughter." Whispers, glances. Sarah felt the weight of them all. "She's been teaching the blind girl to fight." Aunt Beatrice's voice escalated. "Fight. A child who can barely walk without bumping into walls. A child who was born impaired. And this house cleaner decided to play instructor." "I wasn't playing," Sarah stated. Her voice came out firmer than she expected. "I was teaching her self-defense." "Self-defense?" Beatrice scoffed. A sharp, cutting sound. "Self-defense against what?" "The air. The shadows. The girl is blind. She'll never be able to defend herself against anything. All you've done is give false hope to a child who already suffers enough." "That's not true." Beatrice approached, her eyes as cold as glacial ice. "You're irresponsible and dangerous. What if the girl had gotten hurt during your little training sessions? What if she'd broken a bone? Lost a tooth? Would you have explained that to Alistair Blackwood? She never got hurt. She's stronger than ever." "Stronger." Beatrice spat the word. "You think you know what's best for the Shadow Lord's daughter? You, a cleaner who barely knows her place?" Sarah felt anger surge, but before she could reply, the doors to the staff dining hall swung open, and Alistair Blackwood strode in. The Shadow Lord. Sarah had never seen him up close before. He was taller than she'd imagined, more imposing. The air seemed to thicken in his presence. His eyes were as black as coal, and equally cold. "What's going on here?" His voice was low, controlled. But there was an undercurrent that made every employee take a step back. Beatrice smiled, a smile that held no warmth. "Dear nephew, I was just addressing a problem. This woman," she gestured towards Sarah, "has been breaking your rules, visiting Abigail's room, teaching your daughter to fight." Alistair slowly turned to Sarah. His gaze was unreadable. "Is this true?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Yes." "Why?" "Because your daughter deserves more than a gilded cage." The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved. No one breathed. Beatrice looked shocked. The other employees appeared terrified. Alistair simply stared at Sarah, stared for so long that she began to wonder if she'd made a fatal mistake. Then he spoke a single word: "Leave." Sarah felt the floor drop out from under her. "Understood," she replied. "I'll gather my things." "Not you." Alistair turned to Beatrice. "You, leave. I need to speak with this woman in private." For a moment it seemed Beatrice would protest. Her mouth opened. Her eyes flashed with something dangerous. But then she looked at Alistair, really looked, and what she saw there made her recoil. "Of course," she said. The word rasped in her throat. "I'll be in my office if you need me." She swept out. The other employees trailing behind, as quick and silent as mice fleeing a cat. In seconds, the dining hall was empty. Just Alistair and Sarah. He walked to one of the tables, sat down. He looked tired, Sarah realized. Tired in a way that went beyond the physical. "Sit," he directed. It wasn't an invitation. Sarah sat. "How long?" 2 months. "And she?" Alistair paused. Swallowed something that might have been emotion. "Is she all right? You haven't hurt her?" "Never." Sarah felt something shift in her voice, something she hadn't planned. "I would never hurt Abigail. She's the bravest person I've ever met." "Brave." Alistair repeated the word as if it were a foreign language. "My daughter. Brave. She is. Don't you see that? I see a fragile girl who needs protection. A girl who was born into a world that would do anything to hurt her. A girl I failed to protect from the moment she was born. You didn't fail. Her mother died giving birth." Alistair's eyes were distant now, lost somewhere Sarah couldn't reach. The doctors said it was a rare complication, that there was no way to predict it, no way to prevent it. His voice cracked. "I am the Shadow Lord. I control a global tech empire, and I couldn't save my own wife." Sarah said nothing. Some pain was too great for words. "Abigail was born premature," Alistair continued. "Small, fragile, and unblind. The doctors said she probably wouldn't survive the first year. I spent every night of that year awake, listening to her breathe, waiting for the moment when the breathing would stop. But she survived. She survived. And I promised myself I would never let anything hurt her again. That I would build a fortress around her. That the world would never touch her again. So you locked her away. I protected her." Sarah looked at him. Really looked. And saw something she hadn't expected. It wasn't cruelty. It wasn't control. It was fear. A fear so deep and so ancient that it had become part of who he was. "Can I show you something?" she asked. Alistair frowned. "What?" "Come with me." She stood up, walked to the door, stopped, looked back. Alistair was still sitting, looking confused. "Please don't," Sarah said. "Just 5 minutes." He followed her. They climbed the stairs in silence, passed through empty hallways. Guards stepped aside when they saw Alistair, bowing their heads in deference, until they reached Abigail's room. Sarah opened the door. The girl was inside, sitting on the floor in the center of the room. Her eyes closed, her hands on her knees, breathing slowly and deeply. "What is she doing?" Alistair whispered. "Meditating." Sarah smiled. I taught her. It helps to calm the mind and sharpen the other senses. Abigail. Alistair stepped forward. His voice trembled. The girl opened her eyes. The eyes that couldn't see, but that somehow always knew exactly where people were. Dad, she said. And Sarah. She smiled. It's the first time you've both been here together. You knew I was here. I always know when you're close, Dad. You smell like coffee and paperwork, and your boots make a specific sound in the hallway, a little heavier on the left side. Alistair seemed speechless. Sarah taught me to pay attention, Abigail continued. She said my eyes don't work, but that I have 4 other senses that work better than anyone else's. She said I'm not broken. She said I'm different, and that different can be stronger. Sarah saw something shift in Alistair's face. A crack in the armor, a light through the walls he had built. Show him, Sarah said softly. Abigail nodded, closed her eyes. And then, in a move that seemed impossible for an 8-year-old, she assumed a flawless fighting stance. Feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly bent, hands raised, protecting her face. Dad, she said, Abigail is going to try to hit me now. Don't worry, I'll be okay. What the? Abigail moved. Fast. Silent. A straight punch that would have landed on any normal person. Lily evaded it. Not because she saw it, because she heard it, felt it, the displacement of air, the sound of Abigail's clothing rustling, the shift of her weight on the floor. Alistair watched, paralyzed, as his blind daughter blocked blow after blow, not with strength, with precision, with a spatial awareness that went beyond sight. When they stopped, Lily was panting, but smiling. Smiling in a way that Alistair hadn't seen since he could remember. Did you see, Dad? Lily asked. Abigail told me I can defend myself, that I don't need to be afraid, that I'm stronger than everyone thinks. Alistair didn't say anything. He just knelt down, opened his arms, and when Lily ran to him, when he held her tight against his chest, Abigail saw something glint in the Shadow Lord's eyes. Tears. Forgive me, he whispered. Forgive me for locking you away. Forgive me for thinking protecting you meant imprisoning you. It's okay, Dad. Lily hugged him tighter. You were just scared. I understand. I was scared too, until Abigail showed me that fear doesn't have to control me. They stayed like that for a long moment, father and daughter, finally seeing each other for real. And Abigail, watching from a distance, felt that maybe. Just maybe. She had found something she didn't know she was looking for. A place. A purpose. A family. But she was wrong. Because while that moment was happening in Lily's room, elsewhere in Blackwood Manor, Aunt Beatrice was on the phone, and the words she spoke would change everything. The plan continues, she whispered. The Shadow Council Gala is in 48 hours. I want the girl. I want her before that maid ruins everything. A pause. I don't care how. Make it look like a kidnapping. Make it look like an outside enemy. Once I have the girl, I'll have control over the inheritance. And once I have the inheritance, I'll have control over everything. She hung up, looked out the window at the garden where, soon, the gala would take place, and smiled. A smile that was anything but human. And you, listening to this now, are probably thinking you know what's going to happen, that the hero will save the day, that the villain will be defeated. But you don't know one thing. You don't know that someone else heard that call. Someone small, someone that everyone underestimated, someone whose ears were sharper than anyone in Blackwood Manor imagined. Lily Blackwood was in the hallway outside of Aunt Beatrice's office, and she had heard every word. Now she had a choice. Tell her father. Risk him not believing her. Risk him locking her away again, even deeper, to protect her, or keep the secret. Wait. And when the kidnappers came, show everyone exactly what she was capable of. Lily smiled in the darkness of the hallway. She knew exactly what she was going to do. But before I tell you what happened at the gala, you need to understand one more thing. You need to understand what happened in the 48 hours that followed. And you need to understand why the Shadow Lord Alistair Blackwood was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. If this video is holding your attention, I need to ask something. Look, productions like this take a crazy amount of work. Research, scripting, editing. And the YouTube algorithm only shows this content to more people when you all interact with it. So if you're enjoying this, please leave a like now. It takes less than a second, and it helps me keep bringing stories like this. Deal? So let's continue. The 48 hours that followed were the strangest in Abigail Walker's life. Alistair didn't fire her. On the contrary, he promoted her. From housemaid to Lily's personal assistant. You will continue the training, he said the next morning, but now, officially, with schedules, with structure. And he looked at her in a way that made something strange happen in her chest. And I will watch. He watched. On the first day, he stood in the corner of the room, arms crossed, face impossible to read. Abigail felt his eyes on every movement, every instruction, every correction. On the second day, he moved closer, asked questions. How did you know she could do that? Why this move instead of that one? What else can she learn? Abigail answered every question, and with each answer, she saw Alistair's walls crumble a little more. You were a fighter, he said the night before the gala. It wasn't a question. Abigail looked at her own hands, at the scars that marked her knuckles. I was. Why did you stop? Because I hurt someone. Someone I shouldn't have. Someone that I... She stopped, breathed. Someone I loved. Alistair didn't say anything, but his hand found hers. For a moment, just a moment. We all have people we couldn't protect, he said. His voice was soft, different. Maybe that's why I recognize something in you. What do you recognize? Someone who is trying to fix the past by saving the future. Abigail looked at him, really looked at him. And for the first time, she saw beyond the Shadow Lord, saw the man, the father, the widower who still cried at night when he thought no one could hear. I'm not trying to fix anything, she said. I just... Pause. I just saw a girl who needed someone who believed in her. And that someone was you. That someone could have been anyone. But no one tried. So yeah, it was me. They were silent for a moment. The kind of silence that didn't need words. Then Alistair said something that changed everything between them. Tomorrow is the Shadow Council Gala. 50 of the most powerful men in the world will be here. And for the first time in 8 years, I'm going to introduce my daughter to them. Not as an invalid who needs protection, but as the heiress she truly is. Abigail felt tears sting her eyes. Are you sure? You showed me that I was wrong. That protecting doesn't mean imprisoning. That love doesn't mean control. Alistair held her hand tighter. So yes, I'm sure. What neither of them knew was that Aunt Beatrice was listening. And what neither of them imagined was that Lily was also awake. The girl was in her room, pretending to sleep. But her ears were alert. Always alert. She had heard the conversation between Abigail and her father, had felt something grow between them. Something that made her happy. But she had also heard something else. Footsteps in the hallway, the clicking of Aunt Beatrice's heels, the sound of a door clicking shut. And then, very faintly, the whisper of a phone call. Abigail rose, silent as a shadow. She moved to the wall that separated her room from Aunt Beatrice's study. She pressed her ear against the cold stone and listened. Tomorrow night, Aunt Beatrice was saying. During the Shadow Lord's speech, all the security will be in the main hall. The east corridor will be deserted, and when I give the signal. Abigail felt her blood run cold. She knew she should tell someone, and she should run to her father, should scream until someone heard. But she also knew what would happen if she did. Alistair would panic. He'd cancel the gala, lock her away again. All those months of training, all those late nights with Sarah, would be for nothing, and worse. Aunt Beatrice would escape. Without hard evidence, she'd deny everything, and she'd keep plotting, keep waiting, until she found another opportunity. No, Abigail thought, I won't let it happen. She went back to bed, closed her eyes, and smiled in the dark. Tomorrow, she thought to herself. Tomorrow, I'll show everyone exactly who I am. And that was how the night before the gala ended, with secrets, with plans. With a blind girl who was about to do something no one expected. The Shadow Council Gala, the most important event of the year in the business world. 50 of the most powerful people on the planet, gathered in one place, billions of dollars in deals, decades of alliances, centuries of tradition, and at the center of it all, for the first time, would be Abigail Blackwood. Sarah helped her get ready that night, a navy blue dress that complemented her blonde hair, flat shoes that allowed for movement, and in her hair, the red hair ribbon. The same ribbon Sarah used to blindfold her during training. Are you ready? Sarah asked. Abigail smiled. I was born ready. I just didn't know it until you showed me. If something happens downstairs, nothing will happen. Abigail squeezed Sarah's hand. I promise. Everything will be fine. Sarah felt a chill. There was something in Abigail's voice, something she couldn't quite place, but before she could ask, the door opened. Alistair entered, dressed in an immaculate black suit, his eyes as cold as ever, but with something different beneath, something that looked like hope. You both look beautiful, he said. Sarah blushed. Abigail laughed. Dad, you're nervous. I never get nervous. Your heart's beating faster than normal, and you're breathing through your mouth. You only do that when you're nervous. Alistair looked at Sarah. Did she teach you that too? No. That she learned on her own. They went downstairs together. Father, daughter, and the woman who had changed everything. The halls of Blackwood Manor gleamed with golden light. Soft music echoed through the stone walls. And in the grand ballroom, 50 dragons awaited. Dragons, not literally, of course. That's what they called the members of the Shadow Council, people who controlled entire industries, who moved markets with a single phone call, who had more power than most governments. And they all turned when Alistair Blackwood entered the room, with his blind daughter at his side, and a former employee who was now something more. Gentlemen, Alistair said. His voice filled the hall effortlessly. This is my daughter, Abigail Blackwood, the next leader of this empire. Silence. 50 pairs of eyes scrutinized the girl. Sarah could see what they were thinking. A child. Blind. Frail. How could she lead anything? But then Abigail did something unexpected. She stepped forward, alone, without help. And when she spoke, her voice didn't tremble. I know what you're thinking, she said. You're thinking I'm weak, that I'm a liability, that my father should have had another heir. A pause. You're wrong. Murmurs. Glances exchanged. One of the oldest dragons, a man with a white beard named Vladimir Petrov, stepped forward. That's a bold statement for someone so limited, he said. What makes you think you can lead us? Abigail turned towards him. Her eyes didn't meet his, but somehow her gaze did. Mr. Petrov, 67 years old, 3 marriages, 2 children who hate you, Are you limp on your right side because you broke your hip in a skiing accident 15 years ago, and you're nervous right now because your heart is skipping beats? Maybe you should see a doctor. Absolute silence. How did you? Petrov stammered. I hear things you don't hear. I feel things you don't feel. My eyes don't work, but everything else works better. Abigail smiled. So no, I'm not limited. I'm different. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. Alistair looked like he was about to burst with pride. But in a corner of the ballroom, Aunt Beatrice Vance watched with cold eyes, and in her pocket, her phone vibrated once. The signal. The kidnappers were in position. The gala continued. Drinks were served. Conversations flowed. Deals were whispered. Sarah stayed close to Abigail the whole time. Something was bothering her, a premonition she couldn't shake. Are you all right? She asked quietly. Abigail nodded. Just a little tired. Can I go to the restroom? Of course. Do you want me to go with you? I don't need to. I know the way. Sarah hesitated. Something wasn't right. But before she could say anything, Abigail had already walked away. The girl walked through the halls of Blackwood Manor. Her footsteps were silent, her breathing controlled, and her ears alert to every sound. She knew they were coming. She was counting on it. The east corridor was dark. The lights had been switched off. Deliberately, Abigail knew, part of Aunt Beatrice's plan. After all, what could be easier than grabbing a blind girl in a dark hallway? What Aunt Beatrice didn't know was that for Abigail it made no difference, dark or light, day or night. It was all the same to someone who had never seen light. The footsteps came from behind. 2 men, heavy, probably gym junkies, mouth breathers, amateurs. Abigail kept walking, pretending she hadn't noticed. The footsteps got closer. 10 feet, 6 feet, 3 feet. Now. Abigail spun around. The first man wasn't expecting it. His arm was outstretched to grab her. Abigail ducked under, used his momentum against him, and the man slammed into the wall with a dull thud. The second man froze for a second. A second was all Abigail needed. She moved forward, low, fast. Her fists were small, but Sarah had taught her exactly where to hit. Throat, groin, knee. The man went down. Abigail stood in the dark hallway. 2 men groaning on the floor. She wasn't even panting. Sarah was right, she whispered to herself. I'm not frail. But then she heard more footsteps. Many more. Helena hadn't just sent 2 men. She'd sent 6. The other 4 were coming from the other side of the hallway. And this time, they knew what to expect. Abigail took a deep breath. She could fight 2, maybe 3, but 6. She needed help. And it was at that exact moment on the other side of Blackwood Manor that Sarah Walker realized something was wrong. Abigail hadn't returned yet. Excuse me, she said to the man Alistair was talking to. I need to check on something. She left the room. Her pace quickened. Something in her instinct, something that years of training had honed, was screaming. Danger, danger, danger. She ran. The corridors of the manor blurred past. Left, right. Stairs, more corridors, until she heard it, sounds of a struggle, and Abigail's voice. Sarah had never run so fast in her life. She rounded the corner of the east hallway and saw it. Abigail was cornered. 4 men surrounded her. 2 others were on the floor, probably the first to fall. The girl was in a defensive position, but it was clear she couldn't hold out for much longer. Get away from her, Sarah said. Her voice was icy, calm, the kind of calm that comes before a storm. The men turned. One of them laughed. Another one, this will be easy. Sarah didn't respond. She just attacked. Years of training, thousands of hours in the toughest gyms in New York, hundreds of fights. It all came back in a second. The first man fell before he understood what had happened. The second tried to fight back, but Sarah had already moved past him, leaving him on the floor clutching a broken arm. The other two were smarter. They retreated, pulled out knives. Sarah didn't hesitate. She grabbed a flower vase from the hallway, used it as a shield, blocked the first blade, swung, hit the third man in the head with the base of the vase. The fourth man ran. Sarah didn't chase him. Instead, she ran to Abigail. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Abigail shook her head. "I'm fine." She smiled, despite everything. "I took down two of them, Sarah." "Did you see?" "I saw." Sarah hugged her. "You were amazing, but how did you know they were coming?" "I overheard Aunt Beatrice planning it. On the phone. Last night." Sarah froze. "You knew? And you didn't tell anyone?" "I wanted to prove that I could defend myself, that all those nights of training weren't wasted." Abigail's voice was small. "Are you mad at me?" Sarah wanted to be mad, should be mad. But when she looked at that girl standing in the middle of four unconscious men, she could only feel one thing: pride. "I'm not mad," she said. "I'm impressed and terrified. Both things. Sorry for scaring you. You're going to scare me many more times, I'm sure." Footstep, many footsteps, guards finally arriving, and behind them, running faster than anyone, Alistair Blackwood. "Abigail, Sarah." What happened? He saw the men on the floor. He saw the blood. He saw his daughter, standing, unharmed. "What? Dad?" Abigail stepped forward. "There's something you need to know about Aunt Beatrice." Beatrice. The word echoed through the hallway, and in that moment, everyone realized someone was missing. Beatrice had disappeared. "Find her," Alistair ordered. His eyes were cold, colder than Sarah had ever seen. "And bring her to me." Alive. The guards scattered. Alistair knelt in front of Abigail. His hands were shaking as he touched her face. "You fought," he said. His voice was strange, broken. "You actually fought them." "Sarah taught me." Abigail took her father's hands. "She taught me that I don't need to be protected from the world. She taught me that I can be a part of it." Alistair looked at Sarah. There was something in his eyes that she had never seen before, something that made her heart race. "I should have seen this before, should have trusted you from the beginning." "You were afraid," Sarah said. "It's normal to be afraid. Fear almost cost my daughter her life, but it didn't, because she's not fragile, it never was." Alistair stood up. For a moment, he stood still, looking from Sarah to Abigail and back to Sarah. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He kissed her. It was quick, soft, almost hesitant. But it was a kiss. When he pulled away, his eyes were still on hers. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." Sarah couldn't answer. Her heart was beating too fast. Abigail said, "Can you guys do that later? We still need to catch Aunt Beatrice." And just like that, the moment passed. But something had changed, something that couldn't be undone. They found Beatrice an hour later. She was trying to escape through the gardens. The guards surrounded her near the south gate. When they brought her back to the manor, she was still trying to explain. "This is a misunderstanding. I had nothing to do with this. Those men, I don't know them. You have to believe me." Alistair was waiting for her in the Great Hall. All 50 members of the Shadow Council were still there. They had all stayed when news of the attack spread. They all wanted to see how the Shadow Lord would handle the situation. Aunt Beatrice. Alistair was sitting in his chair at the center of the hall. His voice was icy. "Do you deny involvement in the attack on my daughter?" "Of course I deny it." Beatrice seemed outraged. "Do you really believe I would hurt my own niece?" "I don't believe anything." Alistair gestured. A guard brought forward a laptop. "But the evidence speaks for itself." "What is this?" "Recordings. From the security cameras. From your phone calls." Alistair pressed a button. Beatrice's voice filled the hall. The plan continues. The Shadow Council's gala is in 48 hours. I want the girl. Beatrice's face went white. This has been manipulated. You've tampered with these recordings. Really? Alistair stood up, walked toward her. Then maybe my daughter also tampered with what she heard. Through the wall. When you made that call. Abigail approached. The girl was small next to the adults, but her presence was immense. I heard everything, Aunt Beatrice. Every word. Every plan. You wanted to use me to control the inheritance. You wanted to hurt me. Beatrice looked at Abigail, at Alistair, at the 50 Shadow Lords who watched in silence. And then something changed in her face. The mask fell. So what? She said. Her voice was different now. Cold. Real. The girl is useless. Blind. A burden. You should have produced a real heir, Alistair. Not this defective thing. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Alistair spoke. Guards, take her away. She will be judged by the full council, and until then, she speaks to no one, sees no one. She doesn't exist. You can't do this to me. I'm family. You were family. Now you are nothing. Helena was dragged away. Her screams echoed down the hallways for what felt like an eternity. But in the grand hall, no one heard her anymore. All eyes were on Abigail, the blind girl who'd taken down 2 kidnappers single-handedly, who had uncovered a betrayal no one else had seen, who had proven before the 50 most powerful people in the world that she was so much more than anyone imagined. Vladimir Petrov was the first to approach. The old lion, the one who had questioned Abigail earlier that evening, knelt before her. I underestimated you, he said. I apologize. Abigail smiled. No need to apologize. Just don't do it again. Petrov laughed, a genuine laugh. You'll be an excellent leader, Abigail Blackwood. I'll gladly follow you when the time comes. One by one, the others came, each acknowledging the girl they had dismissed only hours before, each seeing what Sarah had always seen. Strength, not the strength of muscles, but the strength that comes from within. The strength that's born when someone finally believes in you. Sarah watched from afar. Her eyes were misty, her heart full. And then Alistair came to her, the Shadow Lord, the most powerful man in that room, and he was looking at her as if she were the only person in the world. You did this, he said. No. Abigail did. I just showed her the way. You showed us both. He took her hand. You showed me that protecting doesn't mean imprisoning, that love doesn't mean control, that trusting someone can be the deepest form of caring. I just did what was right. You did more than that. Alistair stepped closer. You saved my daughter. You saved me. And I don't know how to thank you. Sarah looked at him, into his dark eyes, at the walls that had finally crumbled. You can start by not sending me away, she said. Alistair smiled, a genuine, rare smile. I was thinking of something different. What? Stay. Not as an employee, not as an assistant. He took a deep breath. Stay as something more. I don't know what yet, but I know I don't want you to leave. Sarah felt her heart race. I don't want to go either, she said. Then don't. And so, amidst the chaos, amidst the betrayal and fighting and revelations, something new was born. It wasn't an end. It was a beginning. The night ended with the Shadow Council renewed, with Helena imprisoned, awaiting trial, with Abigail finally free to be who she always was meant to be, and with Sarah and Alistair, side by side, looking towards a future neither of them had planned, but that they both wanted. 3 months later. The sun was rising over Blackwood Manor. Golden light streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the grand training hall that had been built especially for Abigail. The girl stood in the center of the mat. Her eyes still couldn't see, but the rest of her was more alive than ever. "Again," Sarah said. Abigail assumed her stance, took a deep breath, and attacked. The punching bag swung with the impact. 1, 2, 3 times. Each strike was precise, calculated, perfect. "Better," Sarah said, "but you're still favoring your left side." "I know," Abigail smiled. "It's hard to change habits. Habits can be changed. It takes time, but they can." "Are you talking about fighting or my dad?" Sarah laughed. "Maybe both." The door to the hall opened. Alistair entered, carrying a tray with breakfast. "My 2 favorite fighters," he said, taking a break to eat. Abigail ran to him. In the last 3 months, she had grown. Not just physically. Her posture was different. Her shoulders higher. Her voice firmer. "Dad, did you make pancakes?" "I tried." Alistair grimaced. "They might be a little burnt." Sarah approached, sniffed the air. "A little is generous." "Hey, I'm learning." Abigail laughed. "Dad, you control a large slice of global tech. You can't make pancakes? Empires are easier. Pancakes have too many variables." The 3 sat together, ate burnt pancakes, laughed at bad jokes, talked about the future. It was a simple scene, domestic, normal. It was everything Sarah never knew she wanted. "Sarah," Abigail said suddenly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Are you going to stay?" The girl's voice was small, vulnerable. "Not just because of my dad. Are you going to stay because of me too?" Sarah felt something tighten in her chest. She looked at Alistair. He nodded. "Abigail," Sarah said, "I'm not going anywhere. I promise." "A real promise?" "A real promise." Abigail smiled, a smile that lit up the entire hall. "Then I have to tell you something." "What?" The girl stood up, walked to the center of the mat, assumed a stance Sarah had never taught her. "I've been training in secret," Abigail said. "At night, when you 2 are busy being romantic." Sarah's eyes widened. "What have you learned?" "This." Abigail moved. It wasn't the basic sequence of a beginner anymore. It was something more. Something fluid. Something that felt like dance as much as fighting. Her movements were precise, her strikes deadly, her body a perfect weapon. When she stopped, she was smiling. "I found videos on the internet," she explained. "Audio descriptions of advanced techniques, and I practiced every night for 3 months." Sarah was speechless. So was Alistair. "Abigail," Sarah finally said. "That was amazing. I want to be able to protect you too, not just be protected." Abigail's voice was firm. "You taught me that I can be strong. Now I want to be strong enough so that no one ever hurts the people I love." Sarah felt tears in her eyes. "Come here," she said. Abigail ran into her arms. And there, in that hall, illuminated by the morning sun, 3 people who never should have met discovered they had become a family, not by blood, but by something stronger, by choice. 1 year later, Blackwood Manor was celebrating again, but this time, the occasion was different. A wedding. Sarah Walker and Alistair Blackwood. The guests were the same 50 from before. But something had changed. When they looked at Sarah, they no longer saw an employee. They saw the woman who had transformed the Shadow Lord. And when they looked at Abigail, they no longer saw a blind child. They saw a legend in the making. The girl stood beside the altar. White dress, red hair ribbon. The same ribbon as always. She held the rings in a velvet box. "Dad," she whispered. "You're nervous, I'm never nervous. Your heart is beating faster than normal. Alistair smiled. Maybe a little. It's good. It means it's important. The music began. The doors opened, and Sarah walked in. She was beautiful, more beautiful than Alistair had ever seen. But it wasn't the dress. It wasn't the makeup. It was something more. It was peace. The peace of someone who had finally found her place. Sarah walked down the aisle. She passed the gargoyles, the guards, everyone who had once seen her as less, until she reached the altar, until she reached him. "Hey," she said. "Hey," he replied. "Ready for this?" "I was born ready. I just didn't know it until you showed me," Sarah laughed. "Those are Abigail's words. She has more wisdom than the both of us combined." "True," the officiant began to speak. Words about love, about commitment, about two becoming one. But Sarah could barely hear him. She could only look at Alistair, at the man who had been her enemy, her employer, her friend. And now, her husband. When it came time for the vows, she was ready. "Alistair," she said, "I came to Blackwood Manor thinking I knew who I was. A fighter, a survivor, someone who didn't need anyone. You showed me that I was wrong. You showed me that needing someone isn't weakness, that letting someone in isn't danger, that loving isn't losing control. It's gaining something I didn't know was missing. I promise to stand by your side, in the good days and the bad, in the battles and the peace, in the burned pancakes and the perfect ones. I promise to be your partner, your confidant, your protector. And I promise to never let you forget that you are more than the Shadow Lord. You are Alistair, just Alistair. And that is enough." Alistair had tears in his eyes when it was his turn. "Sarah," he said, "when you arrived here, I was a closed-off man, which is a man afraid. A man who thought loving meant controlling. You destroyed all of that. You showed me that protecting isn't imprisoning, that caring isn't suffocating, that the greatest form of love is trusting. You saved my daughter, but more than that, you freed her. And by freeing her, you freed me too. I promise to be the man you deserve, even when I fail, even when I mess up. I will keep trying, because you are worth every attempt, because you are my home, and because I love you and am in a way I didn't know was possible." The rings were exchanged. The kiss was given. And when they turned to the guests, hand in hand, Abigail was crying. Tears of happiness. "I love you guys," she said. "We love you too," they responded together. And it was true. The party continued late into the night, but at some point Sarah slipped out to the gardens. She needed a moment, just a moment, to process everything. She was there, looking at the stars, when soft footsteps approached. "Abigail, are you okay?" the girl asked. "I am. Better than okay." Sarah smiled. "I just needed a minute. Can I stay here with you? Always." They were silent for a moment, two people who had changed each other's lives. "Sarah," said Abigail. "Yes?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For everything. For teaching me how to fight. For teaching me that I'm not broken. For loving my dad. For staying." Sarah felt tears in her eyes. "You don't need to thank me. You gave me as much as I gave you. Even so, thank you." They hugged, and there, under the stars of Blackwood Manor, a story that began with fear ended with love. A story of a Shadow Lord who learned that protecting isn't controlling, of a fighter who found a family she didn't know she was looking for, and of a blind girl who proved to the world that the greatest strengths are the ones no one can see. "Abigail," said Sarah. "Yes?" "Are you ready for the next phase of your training?" The girl smiled, a smile that shone even in the dark. "I was born ready." And it was true. 5 years later. The world had changed. Blackwood Manor was no longer the same silent, somber place it had once been. The hallways that once echoed with fear now resonated with laughter. The windows that had remained shuttered now let the sunlight stream in. And Abigail Blackwood, now 13 years old, was responsible for much of that change. She was in the grand training hall. No longer the small, fragile girl she once was. She was a teenager, tall, strong, with her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail and the same red hair ribbon as always. Her eyes still didn't see. They never would. But that had ceased to be a limitation long ago. "Ready?" said Sarah's voice from across the mat. Abigail smiled. "I was born ready." Sarah attacked. It was no longer the gentle attack of a teacher. It was a real attack. Fast, precise, deadly. And Abigail blocked every blow. The fight lasted almost 5 minutes. Blows exchanged at speeds most people couldn't follow. Movements that seemed choreographed but were completely improvised. When they finally stopped, both were breathless. "Better," said Sarah. "Much better." Abigail tilted her head. "But I'm still not good enough to beat you. No one is good enough to beat me." "Yet," Sarah laughed. "That's the spirit I like to see." The door to the hall opened. Alistair entered, carrying a folder of documents. "Interrupting training again, Dad." Abigail feigned annoyance. "It's becoming a habit. Sorry, Shadow Council business. But Sarah, I need you for a moment." Sarah looked at Abigail. The girl nodded. "Go ahead, I'll practice on my own." Sarah followed Alistair out of the hall. When they were far enough away, she asked, "What happened?" Alistair sighed. "It's Beatrice." Sarah felt her body tense. "What about her?" "She died. Last night. In prison." Sarah felt nothing. Maybe she should have. Maybe she should have felt relief or sadness or something. But Beatrice had ceased to be relevant long ago. How? Heart attack, the doctors said it was quick. Does Abigail know? Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. We'll tell her together. Alistair nodded. Thank you. They found Abigail still in the training hall. The girl was practicing a sequence of movements that even Sarah didn't recognize. Abigail, said Alistair, can we talk? The girl stopped, turned in their direction, and then said something that surprised them both. I know. About Aunt Beatrice. How did you... The guards were talking in the hallway. I overheard them. Sarah approached. How are you feeling? Abigail was silent for a moment, then said something that showed how much she had matured. I don't know. She was a bad person. She tried to hurt me. She wanted to destroy our family, but she was still family. And I guess a part of me wanted her to have redeemed herself, that she had changed. Some people don't change, said Alistair softly. I know. But that doesn't mean I can't feel sadness for what she could have been. Sarah felt a surge of pride. She was so proud. It almost didn't fit in her chest. You are incredible, she said. You know that, right? Abigail smiled. I learned from the best. They embraced. And for a moment, the ghost of Beatrice Vance was finally laid to rest. Life went on. Abigail started attending school. Not a special school. A normal school. With normal kids. And normal challenges. At first, it was difficult. The other children didn't know how to act around her. Some were afraid, others felt sorry for her, some were just plain cruel. But Abigail faced each challenge the same way she faced everything. With calm, with determination, and occasionally, with a little humor. There was one particularly memorable incident in the second month of school. A group of older boys had decided it would be fun to play pranks on the blind girl. They hid her things, moved the furniture around, made strange noises to scare her. Abigail endured it in silence for a week. Then, one day, during recess, she approached the leader of the group. I know what you're doing, she said. Her voice was calm, almost friendly. And I want you to know something. What? The boy sneered. Gonna tell the teacher? No. Abigail smiled. I'm going to tell you a story about the last person who tried to bully me. Oh yeah, and what happened to them? They're in prison. Abigail let the sentence hang in the air. But before that, I broke the nose of 2 of the guys they sent after me. The boy stopped laughing. You're lying. Research it. Shadow Lord Alistair Blackwood, attempted kidnapping. It's all over the news. Abigail continued. And then you'll see a picture of me, 8 years old, standing in the middle of a hallway, with 6 guys on the floor. Silence. Now, Abigail continued, you can keep trying to bully me. But I'm going to give you some advice. I've trained in martial arts every day for the last 5 years, and I don't need to see you to know exactly where you are. The boy took a step back. Or, Abigail said, her voice softening, you can decide that I'm not worth the effort, and we can pretend this week never happened. The choice is yours. The boy never bothered her again. In fact, 2 months later, he apologized. And 6 months after that, they were friends. And that showed something about Abigail that Sarah always knew. She wasn't just strong. She was wise. She knew when to fight, but more importantly, she knew when not to fight. And that was the true strength. The years passed. Abigail grew up. She finished school with excellent grades. She got into university. She studied business administration, preparing to one day take over her father's empire. Sarah and Alistair had another child, a boy, Ethan, who was born with his father's eyes and his mother's spirit. Ethan adored his older sister. He followed her everywhere. He asked her endless questions. And Abigail, who had never been good with patience, discovered that she had all the patience in the world for him. Are you going to teach me how to fight? He asked one day. He was 6 years old. Abigail knelt down in front of him. Why do you want to learn how to fight? To protect you. Abigail felt something tighten in her chest. I don't need protecting, Ethan. Everyone needs protecting sometimes. Even you. He took her hand. So I'm going to learn, for the days when you need me to. Abigail hugged her brother. All right, she said. I'll teach you. But first you have to promise me one thing. What? That you'll never use what I teach you to hurt someone who doesn't deserve it. Ethan nodded solemnly. I promise. And so, the tradition continued. One generation teaching the next. A family built not by blood, but by choice. A story that began with fear and ended with love. Abigail Blackwood was 21 years old when she officially took over as vice president of the Blackwood Tech Empire. The ceremony was held in the same great hall where 13 years earlier she had faced the 50 members of the board for the first time. So much had changed since then. Some of the older members had passed away, others had retired. New faces had taken their places. But one thing remained the same. When Abigail entered the hall, everyone stood up, not out of obligation, out of respect. She walked to the center of the hall. Her steps were firm, her posture impeccable, and her presence was so strong that it seemed to fill the entire space. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, she said. Her voice did not tremble. It has been 13 years since I stood before you for the first time. That night, many of you underestimated me. You thought I was weak, invalid, a burden. She paused. That night, I promised that I would prove you wrong. And today, I am here to fulfill that promise. Murmurs rippled through the hall. I am no longer the 8-year-old girl who fought off kidnappers in a dark hallway. I am a woman, a leader, and I have a vision for this empire that goes beyond anything you have ever imagined. More murmurs, some curious, some skeptical. My father built this empire with strength and determination. He transformed it into what it is today. But the world is changing, and we need to change with it. Abigail walked through the hall. Her eyes could not see, but she knew every corner of that space. For years, the Blackwood Empire has operated in the shadows. We have done deals that we preferred not to discuss. We have made decisions that we prefer not to remember. And we have justified it all in the name of profit. Absolute silence now. That ends today. Alistair, sitting next to Sarah in the front row, felt a chill. He didn't know what Abigail was going to say. She had insisted on keeping her speech a secret. From now on, Abigail continued, the Blackwood Empire will operate differently. Total transparency. Social responsibility. Investments in education, health and technology for people with disabilities. Some of the older members exchanged worried glances. I know what you're thinking, Abigail said. You're thinking that this will cost money, that it will reduce profits, that it is a naive decision from a girl who doesn't understand how the world works. She smiled. You are wrong. Again. A screen descended behind her. Numbers began to appear. For the past 2 years, I have conducted a pilot project in 3 of our subsidiaries. I have implemented exactly the changes that I am proposing. And the results? The numbers changed. A 37% increase in productivity, a 45% reduction in employee turnover, and a 22% increase in profits. Shocked silence. Doing the right thing is not only morally correct, it's also good for business. Happy employees work better, consumers prefer ethical brands, and investors are becoming increasingly interested in companies with a positive social impact. Abigail powered down the screen. So yes, I'm the blind girl you underestimated 13 years ago, but I'm also the woman who will lead this empire into the future. And if anyone here has a problem with that, the door is open. No one moved. Excellent. Abigail smiled. Then let's begin. The meeting that followed lasted 6 hours. Heated debates, tough questions, resistance from some of the more conservative members. But in the end, the vote was unanimous. Abigail Blackwood was officially the Vice President of the Blackwood Empire, and her vision for the future was now the vision of the Dragon Council. That night, after all the guests had left, Abigail was in the Manor's garden, the same garden where, so many years ago, Sarah had gazed at the stars after her wedding. Footsteps approached. 2 pairs, Sarah and Alistair. You were incredible in there, Sarah said. I learned from the best. Alistair sat beside his daughter. I have a confession to make. What is it? When you were born, I was afraid. Afraid that the world would hurt you. Afraid that I wouldn't be able to protect you. Afraid that you would suffer because of your blindness. Abigail said nothing, just listened. I was so wrong. He took her hand. You didn't need protection. You needed opportunity. Someone who believed in you. A chance to show who you really were. Sarah gave me that, Abigail said. She did, and I'm eternally grateful to her for that. But you did the rest. You fought. You grew. You became something I never imagined. What? A true leader. Abigail felt tears welling in her eyes. Dad. I'm proud of you, Abigail. More proud than words can express. And I know that. When the time comes for me to leave this world, the Empire will be in hands far more capable than mine. Don't talk like that, Abigail said. You still have many years ahead of you, I know, but I wanted you to know. In case I never get the chance to say it again. They embraced. Father and daughter, dragon and princess. 2 people who had come a long way. Since that day when Alistair discovered that his housekeeper was teaching his blind daughter how to fight. Sarah watched from afar. Her eyes were moist, her heart overflowing. She thought about everything that had happened since she arrived at Blackwood Manor. A housekeeper without direction, a fighter trying to forget her past, a woman who didn't know she was looking for a family, and now, she had it all. A husband who loved her, a daughter who was her greatest source of pride, a son who was her greatest joy, and a purpose that gave meaning to every day. "Sarah," Abigail said suddenly, "come here." Sarah approached. Abigail hugged her, a strong hug, filled with everything that words couldn't express. "Thank you," Abigail said, "for everything, for teaching me how to fight, for teaching me that I'm not broken, for loving my dad, for becoming my mum." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. "You are my daughter," she said, "in every way. That matters, I know. And you are my mum, in every way. That matters." They stayed like that for a long moment. 3 people, under the stars, a family built by choice. And when they finally separated, Abigail said one last thing. "You know what the greatest lesson, Nista, you taught me is?" "What's that?" "That true strength isn't about power, it's about courage. The courage to be vulnerable, to trust, to love, even when it hurts, to fight, even when it seems impossible." Sarah smiled. "I didn't teach you that. You already had it. Inside you. Maybe. But you showed me how to find it." And then, under the starry sky of Blackwood Manor, a girl who was born without being able to see, looked at the future with more clarity than anyone she knew. Because she had learned the most important truth of all. Eyes can deceive. The world can be cruel. People can underestimate you. But the strength that comes from within, the strength that is born, when someone believes in you, that strength, no one can take away. And that was the story of Abigail Blackwood, the blind girl who learned to fight, the daughter who saved her father, the leader who changed an empire, and the living proof that the greatest strengths are the one that no one can see. If this story touched you in some way, if it made you think about the people you've underestimated, if it made you question what it really means to protect someone you love, then leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, because we all have an Abigail inside us. We all have a strength that the world can't see. The only question is, who will be the Sarah who helps us find it? Comment down below. Abigail, if you've ever felt underestimated by the world. Sarah, if you've ever been the person who believed in someone when no one else did. I want to know your story. Until the next video.